The Island of Shadows. The mysterious disappearance. The small coastal town of Evershore had always been shrouded in mystery. The town's economy thrived on fishing, and the locals lived a simple life. But there was one place that everyone avoided, an ominous island known as Grim Isle, lying about 10 miles off the coast. Legend spoke of ships disappearing in its vicinity, only to be found later, abandoned and crewless. In the summer of 1923, a wealthy businessman named Harold Lansing purchased the island. He was captivated by the mysterious aura and decided to build a lavish estate, confident he could debunk the superstitions. Lansing invited his family and closest friends to celebrate the completion of his mansion. That celebration marked the last time anyone heard from Harold Lansing and his guests. The island had claimed its newest victims. Chapter 1: The Journey Begins. Almost a century later, the legend of Grim Isle had only grown darker. The island was now a forbidden subject among the townspeople, and the mansion stood abandoned, its walls crumbling and covered in vines. Despite the chilling tales, a group of adventurous friends, Lisa, Mark, Sarah, and Tom, decided to explore the island. They were avid thrill seekers and dismissed the warnings as mere folklore. On a foggy morning, they set out in a small boat, determined to uncover the island's secrets. As they approached, a sense of unease settled over them. The air grew colder, and the sea around them seemed unnaturally still. Undeterred, they docked the boat and made their way through the dense, tangled forest that covered the island. Chapter 2: The Abandoned Mansion. After hours of trudging through the undergrowth, the group finally arrived at the mansion. It was an imposing structure, now in ruins, with shattered windows and doors hanging off their hinges. Despite the dilapidated state, the grandeur of the mansion was still evident. They pushed open the creaky front door and stepped inside. The interior was dark and musty, with furniture covered in dust and cobwebs hanging from the ceiling. The air was thick with an overpowering sense of decay. As they explored, they found remnants of the Lansing family's opulent lifestyle, decaying furniture, tattered portraits, and broken chandeliers. Lisa, the most daring of the group, suggested they split up to cover more ground. Reluctantly, they agreed and ventured into different parts of the mansion. Mark and Sarah went upstairs, while Lisa and Tom explored the ground floor. Chapter 3: The Unseen Presence. As Mark and Sarah ascended the grand staircase, the air grew colder. They found themselves in a long corridor with numerous doors. The first few rooms were empty, but then they came across a bedroom with an old, ornate mirror. As Sarah approached the mirror, she felt a sudden chill and saw a shadowy figure behind her. She spun around, but the hallway was empty. Downstairs, Lisa and Tom discovered the kitchen. It looked as if it had been abandoned in haste. Pots and pans were scattered across the floor, and a rotting smell permeated the air. Tom noticed an old journal on the counter. He picked it up and started reading aloud. The journal belonged to Harold Lansing, and the final entries spoke of strange noises, cold drafts, and the feeling of being watched. Suddenly, they heard a loud crash from the basement. Against their better judgment, they decided to investigate. They found a hidden door leading to a narrow staircase. As they descended, the temperature dropped sharply, and their flashlights flickered. Chapter 4: The Haunting Begins. Mark and Sarah, still upstairs, found a study filled with old books and papers. As they searched through the documents, they discovered detailed notes about occult rituals. Lansing had apparently become obsessed with contacting the spirits rumored to haunt the island. Mark felt a growing sense of dread. It was clear that whatever Lansing had tried to summon had gone horribly wrong. In the basement, Lisa and Tom found an old, rusted iron door. Behind it was a small, dark room with strange symbols painted on the walls. In the center of the room was a large, circular stone altar. As they stepped closer, the door slammed shut behind them. The room plunged into darkness, and a low, guttural whisper filled the air. Upstairs, Sarah suddenly screamed. Mark turned to see her being pulled towards the mirror by an unseen force. He grabbed her hand and pulled with all his strength, but the force was too strong. In a desperate attempt, he shattered the mirror with a chair. The force released Sarah, and they both fell to the floor, gasping for breath. Chapter 5: The Descent into Madness. Lisa and Tom banged on the iron door, screaming for help. The whispers grew louder, turning into malevolent laughter. The temperature in the room dropped to freezing, and they could see their breath in the air. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a gaunt, spectral apparition with hollow eyes. It reached out towards them, its touch sending waves of icy terror through their bodies. Meanwhile, Mark and Sarah, disoriented and frightened, decided to find their friends and leave the island. They rushed downstairs, but the house seemed to change around them. Hallways stretched and twisted, doors led to different rooms, and the windows showed nothing but darkness outside. In the basement, Lisa and Tom were paralyzed with fear as the apparition closed in. In a desperate bid to escape, Tom grabbed a piece of broken wood and swung it at the figure. It passed through the apparition harmlessly, but the distraction allowed them to run past it and force the door open. They stumbled up the stairs, only to find the ground floor of the mansion completely transformed. Chapter 6: The Final Confrontation. The group reunited in the main hall, their faces pale and eyes wide with terror. The mansion was now a labyrinth of nightmarish proportions. Doors appeared and disappeared, and the walls seemed to close in on them. The whispers and laughter echoed through the halls, growing louder and more menacing. Desperate to find a way out, they decided to return to the front door, but it was no longer there. Instead, they found themselves in a grand dining room with a long table set for a feast. The table was covered in decayed food, and at the head of the table sat the ghostly figure of Harold Lansing. Lansing's eyes glowed with an unnatural light. "Welcome, guests," he said in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "You've come to join the others." The group backed away in horror as the walls around them began to pulse and twist. Spectral figures emerged from the shadows, the lost souls of Lansing's family and friends. They reached out with skeletal hands, their faces contorted in eternal agony. Mark, summoning all his courage, grabbed an old candelabra from the table and set the decaying drapes on fire. The flames quickly spread, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The ghosts recoiled, and Lansing's form flickered. "We need to get out now," Mark shouted. The fire gave them a brief window to escape. They ran through the twisting hallways, the mansion groaning and shaking as if in pain. The whispers turned to screams, and the temperature rose rapidly. Chapter 7: Escape from Grim Isle. The group finally found a door that led outside. They burst through it, the cool night air hitting their faces like a wave of relief. Behind them, the mansion was engulfed in flames, the fire casting an eerie glow on the island. They ran towards the boat, but as they reached the shore, they saw it was gone, likely swept away by the rising tide. Panic set in as they realized they were trapped. The flames from the mansion grew higher, illuminating the island and revealing the twisted, haunted landscape. In a final, desperate attempt, they searched for another way off the island. They found an old, rickety rowboat hidden among the rocks. It was barely seaworthy, but it was their only hope. They pushed it into the water and paddled with all their strength, the island's dark presence looming behind them. As they reached the open sea, the mansion finally collapsed in on itself with a deafening roar. The fire flickered out, and the island was swallowed by darkness once more. Exhausted and terrified, the group paddled towards the distant lights of Evershore, the whispers of the island still echoing in their minds. The aftermath. The group returned to Evershore, forever changed by their ordeal. They vowed never to speak of what happened on Grim Isle, fearing they would be branded as mad or worse. But the island's curse had left its mark. Each of them was haunted by nightmares, the faces of the lost souls and the sinister laughter of Harold Lansing forever etched in their memories. The townspeople noticed the change in them but dared not ask. Grim Isle remained a forbidden subject, and the story of the island and its haunted mansion became just another chilling tale whispered among the fishermen and passed down through generations. The island, now abandoned and shunned by all, lay in wait. Its dark secrets remained hidden, and its curse continued to fester, ready to claim the next curious soul who dared to set foot on its shores. Grim Owl was a place where shadows lived, and those who ventured there were destined never to return the same, if at all.
Don't forget to subscribe.